You're standing at the foot of a low hill in the heart of St. Paul, looking up at a dome of pure white marble that seems to glow against the sky. High above it, four golden horses leap forward, frozen mid-stride, catching the light. That dome is the second largest self-supporting marble dome anywhere on Earth. And the only one larger sits atop St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. This is the Minnesota state capitol, and almost everything about it turns out to be grander than you expect. Welcome to Minnesota Explorer, a podcast dedicated to bringing you a new adventure somewhere in Minnesota with every episode. Each week we'll travel to a different destination, from scenic state parks and beautiful lakes to fascinating cities, historic landmarks and hidden gems tucked away across this incredible state. If you're gearing up for your own trip, head over to northstartravelers.com, where you'll find gear recommendations to help you travel smarter, plus a full list of our other podcast shows covering destinations around the world. If you love discovering new places and planning your next adventure, follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, leaving a positive review goes a long way in helping others find it. Now let's explore Minnesota. Before you step inside, it helps to know that the building in front of you is actually Minnesota's third state capitol. And the first two have quite a story. The very first was finished in the 1850s, back when Minnesota was still a young state finding its footing. Then, on a cold night in 1881, while the legislature was actually in session, a fire broke out and burned the place to the ground. The replacement went up quickly in 1883, but it was too small almost from the day it opened, and it was plagued by terrible ventilation. By the early 1890s, the state had simply outgrown it and wanted something worthy of Minnesota's ambitions. So in 1895, the state held an architectural competition, and more than 40 designs came pouring in, nearly all of them grand domed, columned buildings inspired by the world's Columbian Exposition that had dazzled the country in Chicago 2 years earlier. The winning entry came from a young architect named Cass Gilbert. He was just 35 years old, born in Ohio but raised right here in St. Paul, and he had cut his teeth in the prestigious New York office of McKim, Mead, and White before serving as an architecture judge at that very Chicago World's Fair. Winning this commission would launch him onto the national stage. Gilbert would go on to design the United States Supreme Court building in Washington. Construction stretched across nearly a decade. The cornerstone was laid in the summer of 1898 by Alexander Ramsey, who was 83 years old at the time and had been Minnesota's first territorial governor, a living link back to the state's earliest days. Gilbert didn't just draw the plans and walk away. He supervised the construction, he designed the furniture, and he oversaw the decoration down to the smallest detail. He famously said that in the old days, the architect, the painter, and the sculptor were often one and the same man, and he saw no reason that should change. One of the fights Gilbert picked and won was over the marble. He insisted on gleaming white Georgia marble for the exterior, arguing that anything darker would make the building look, in his words, glooming and forbidding. Critics worried that buying out-of-state stone would cost Minnesota craftsmen their jobs, so a clever compromise was struck. The contractor leased the Georgia quarry, shipped the rough-cut blocks all the way to St. Paul, and let local stonecutters do the finish work right here on site. Minnesota granite from St. Cloud went into the steps and terraces, so the building still carries the stone of the state in its bones. When the Capitol finally opened to the public on January 2, 1905, thousands of Minnesotans streamed in to see it, and the local papers boasted that theirs was the most beautiful state house in the entire country. In one of the most moving moments of those early days, aging Civil War veterans carried their tattered, battle-worn regimental flags from the old Capitol over to the new one, where many of them still rest today. More than a century of use eventually took its toll, and from 2013 to 2017, the building underwent a sweeping $310 million restoration, cleaning a century of grime off the murals, repairing the marble, and bringing the whole place back to its original 1905 brilliance. What you're about to walk through looks very much the way Gilbert intended it to look. Let's begin out here on the great front steps because the exterior is a show all its own. Look up at those golden horses. That sculpture is officially titled The Progress of the State, though almost everyone just calls it the Quadriga, or simply the Golden Horses. It's made of gilded copper, and it tells a little story. A charioteer representing prosperity holds a horn of plenty, and a staff flying the Minnesota banner, The 4 horses stand in for the forces of nature, and 2 women walk alongside, guiding those forces with strength and grace. It was designed by Daniel Chester French, the same sculptor who later carved the seated Abraham Lincoln in the Lincoln Memorial, working with the animal sculptor Edward Potter. Just below it, 6 colossal marble figures represent the virtues, courage, bounty, integrity, prudence, truth, and wisdom, and 12 stone eagles keep watch around the base of the dome. When you're ready, climb the steps and step through the front doors and let your eyes adjust to the grandeur inside. You're now standing in the rotunda, the great round heart of the building, and if you tip your head back, you'll see the dome soaring more than 140 feet above you, with a crystal chandelier 6 feet across hanging from its center, lit by 92 bulbs. But before you look up, look down. Set into the floor beneath your feet is a large star made of inlaid stone, echoed again in brass and glass, a quiet nod to Minnesota's nickname, the North Star State. People naturally gather here, and there's a wonderful trick to it. Stand near the center, and your voice carries in a way it doesn't anywhere else in the building. Around the walls, you'll find glass cases holding those Civil War battle flags, rotated and displayed with real care. And high overhead, ringing the rotunda above the 3rd floor, are 4 enormous murals by the artist Edward Simmons, telling an allegorical story called The Civilization of the Northwest. Take your time here. Most visitors rush through the rotunda on their way upstairs and miss half of what's around them. When you're ready, head up the grand staircase toward the 2nd floor and notice as you climb that the staircase is largely self-supporting, one of the engineering feats that amazed visitors back in 1905. The 2nd floor is what they call the grand floor, and it's where the real machinery of state government lives. Off the rotunda, you'll find the chambers of the Senate, the House of Representatives, and the Supreme Court. When the legislature isn't in session, you can step right up to the doorways and look in at the restored chambers. The carpets, the carved woodwork, the painted ceilings all return to their original colors. In the Senate chamber, look to the side walls for murals by Edwin Blashfield celebrating agriculture, patriotism, and the Mississippi River. In the House chamber, look up at the ceiling, where 4 names are inscribed: La Salle, Hennepin, Perrot, and Duluth, honoring the early French explorers who first mapped this corner of the continent. And in the Supreme Court chamber, 4 magnificent murals by John Lafarge explore the idea of justice across different cultures and centuries. When you're ready, make your way toward the governor's reception room, because this is one space you don't want to walk past. Step inside and you'll understand immediately why this is considered the most ornate room in the entire building. The woodwork is white oak, the ceiling is laced with gold-tinted metal leaf, and at the center sits an original hand-carved mahogany table that Cass Gilbert himself designed. On the walls hang a series of large Civil War paintings, dramatic, sweeping battle scenes that have sparked plenty of debate over the years about how Minnesota tells its own history. This was actually the very first room restored to its original appearance back in the 1980s, long before the rest of the building got its turn. If a tour isn't passing through and the room is open, it's worth simply pausing in the doorway to take in the craftsmanship. When you're ready, let's head all the way down to the ground floor to a space that hides a surprising secret. Tucked into the lower level is the Rathskeller Café, a room designed to feel like a warm old German beer hall, with vaulted ceilings painted in trailing grapevines, flowers, mythical birds, and cheerful German mottos. Here's the surprise. Not long after the building opened, anti-German sentiment swept the country during the First World War, and those charming German murals and slogans were painted right over and hidden away for decades. It wasn't until a careful restoration in 1999 that the original artwork was uncovered and brought back to life. The Rathskeller still works as a cafe, though it generally only opens for dining when the legislature is in session. So if you catch it open, step in and look up at that beautiful ceiling. When you're ready, and weather permitting, ask at the tour center about getting up onto the roof, because this is the experience people talk about long after they leave. Seasonally, and on the guided tours when conditions allow, you can climb up to a viewing area right at the base of the dome, out near those golden horses you admired from the steps below. From up here, the Quadriga is close enough to appreciate every detail of the gilding, and the view stretches out across downtown Saint Paul, the cathedral on its hill, and the river valley beyond. It's the kind of vantage point that makes the whole visit click into place. You suddenly understand how Gilbert imagined this building crowning the city. Just know that roof access depends on the season and the weather, so it's worth asking about the moment you arrive rather than saving it for last. A few practical notes worth weaving into your visit. The Capitol is free to walk through, and free guided tours leave near the top of the hour and run about 45 minutes, starting from the information and tour center on the main level. That's also where you'll find a small gift shop. The guides will get you into rooms and corners you can't always reach on your own, and they bring the art and the politics to life in a way the rooms alone can't. Weekdays, the building hums with the energy of government actually at work. Weekends are quieter and calmer with easier parking, though you'll see fewer of the chambers in action. Either way, give yourself a good hour or two. This is a place that rewards lingering. So what stays with you after a visit here? It's standing under that 140-foot dome with the North Star glinting in the floor beneath your feet. It's getting close enough to the golden horses to see the sunlight catch the gilding. It's the strange, wonderful story of a German beer hall that was painted over by history and then carefully brought back. And it's the simple fact that one of the most beautiful statehouses in America is sitting right here in St. Paul, open to anyone who wants to walk in, completely free. It's a remarkable thing, and it's easy to take for granted if you've driven past it 100 times. Before you head out, there's plenty more worth seeing close by. Just up the hill, a short distance away, stands the magnificent Cathedral of Saint Paul, a soaring Beaux-Arts church with a great copper dome and a breathtaking interior of marble, stained glass, and stone. It's open to visitors outside of services, and like the Capitol, it's one of those places that feels even more impressive than you imagined. A short walk in the other direction brings you to the Minnesota History Center, a beautifully designed museum packed with engaging, hands-on Minnesota history and rotating exhibits, an easy way to spend an afternoon, especially with kids. And down in the heart of downtown St. Paul, you'll find the Landmark Center, a striking former federal courthouse turned cultural center, full of galleries, history, and old gangster-era stories from St. Paul's colorful past. When hunger hits, you've got a couple of local favorites within a short drive. Cossetta is a St. Paul institution that's been serving Italian food for generations, a bustling cafeteria-style market and eatery where you can grab pasta, a slice of pizza, and a cannoli from the bakery downstairs. And over on Selby Avenue, Red Cow is the spot locals point you to for a genuinely great burger and truffle fries in a relaxed, welcoming room. Either one makes an easy, satisfying stop after a morning at the Capitol. That brings us to the end of today's episode. Before you go, a few quick things. Subscribe so you never miss a destination, leave us a positive review to help others find the show, and share this episode with someone who loves exploring Minnesota. And if you're hungry for more adventures beyond Minnesota, visit northstartravelers.com to explore our other podcast shows and browse gear recommendations for wherever your next journey takes you. Your support means the world and keeps these adventures coming. Thanks for joining us, and happy trails.